to Something for the Turbo, the new weekly podcast brought to you by Unfound, the global platform for the travel-loving cyclist. Very excited today to be joined by Dougie Shaw, founder of Edinburgh Bike Fitting. Dougie is an expert bike fitter who's built quite a reputation, not only in his native Scotland, but across the UK and further afield, having worked with some of the world's top bike fitters. Dougie's got an interesting background. He started his life athletically as a gymnast. He studied sports science. He's become a cycling coach. He's been a racer, but his real passion is fitting. And throughout all those disciplines, he's brought a unique eye and attention to detail to become one of the best bike fitters around. Having spoke to Dougie offline, we agreed that it's such a broad and complex discussion that one podcast wasn't going to cover everything. So he's very kindly agreed to join us on a number of discussions where we can break things down to discuss particular elements. So we're going to start off today by talking about your fit on the turbo, and also, given we've all got so much time at the moment, how potentially you can make some tweaks or just to make sure that your riding position is optimal by making doing a few checks yourself on the turbo, which is very kind of him. We'll also be doing a number of other series, including looking at shoes and cleat positions and different shoe options, which I think many of you will find pretty particularly fascinating. And we'll also be looking at more sort of high performance things further down the line in terms of race position, TT positions, many other factors within bike fitting that we'll discuss on a topic by topic basis. We're very keen to hear your feedback as well. So do reach out, contact@unfound.cc. That's contact@unfound.cc. Let us know if you have any questions or if there's anything you'd like us to put to Dougie. And obviously we'll give you Dougie's contact details in the show notes as well, so feel free to reach out to him as well. The last thing from a personal perspective, please, if you haven't already, do download the Unfound app, join our global community of cyclists and get involved. It's a bit of a crazy time for everyone at the moment, but there's a brilliant community of cyclists from around the world on there. Share your rides if you are getting out for solo rides. Share any interesting articles or films that you've seen and just interact. I think it's a great place and it's a nice distraction in this crazy time to mingle with other cyclists from around the world, find out a little bit more about their corners of the world where they ride or their disciplines, and basically distract yourself from the madness that is the COVID pandemic. Anyway, without further ado, let's get speaking to Dougie. Enjoy. Very good. Well, I've given the sort of formal introduction and sort of mentioned that what we're going to be doing is hopefully a series of podcasts on various different elements of bike fitting. I think you and I spoke offline, and there's so many different pieces to the puzzle when it comes to bike fitting and performance as well that it's easier to break down. So today's episode, we're going to talk about fitting for the turbo and also using this time in lockdown to maybe tweak a couple of your positions while we've got so much time on the turbo intensively. But before we kick on to that, let's find out a little bit more about your background. Obviously, you've built up a fantastic reputation in the bike fitting world and a brilliant business. How did you get into it? What's your background? Tell us a little bit more about that.
So I got into bike fitting kind of as a result of, I don't know, like a bunch of decisions that led me on the way to this path. I think the reason specifically why bike fitting, I think kind of thinking back, I'd always really wanted to sort of start my own business. And I think when I was just getting into cycling, I'd kind of come from gymnastics. So I think being a bit more body aware was definitely maybe something that was working in my favor. So for instance, when I was getting dropped from rides, I would find that my left foot and right foot, for instance, wouldn't feel the same, or my left leg and right leg wouldn't feel the same. And I just kind of, I don't know, I felt like that really wasn't right. And despite me asking all of the guys I was riding with, oh, do you not get these problems, for instance, they would just sort of say, oh, well, you just get used to it and just don't think about it. And I think for me, just maybe the way that I am, I didn't really settle for that because I knew that it didn't have to, surely there has to be the right saddle height for the most optimal transfer of power to the pedals and like absolutely perfect. So
and to be fair, that's completely right. I think a lot of cyclists just sort of grin and bear stuff or just don't think about it.
Totally unnecessarily as well, by the way.
Do you think your gymnastics background had a part to play in that? Because obviously that's a very detail-orientated discipline where you're focused on absolute perfection of your execution.
Maybe. I guess I didn't come into it any other way, you see, so it's difficult for me to know. But I think maybe. I think definitely as a gymnast, you have to know what your arms and legs are doing pretty much all the time. So maybe being slightly more aware that I wasn't in control, for instance, of various parts of the pedal stroke. Maybe that's one thing I can put my finger on. I definitely didn't feel comfortable. I think one of the main things that used to get me specifically with cleats was whenever I would pedal on my bike as a kid, I just couldn't ever remember having these problems, whereas now I was having these big ones. And whenever I would pedal on my crappy hybrid bike that I had as a student with flat pedals, I never seemed to have the same issues. So I was like, well, what the hell's going on? And yeah, why is it with cleats on I suddenly developed all these problems. So I just started asking all these questions, and I think I was in the right place at the right time with my discovery that I was having these problems, because I was doing a sports science degree, so I was able to get into the lab at university, and basically just any subject that I had free rein on, or any study that I had free rein on during my degree, I would just engineer some sort of cycling related topic to basically self-treat myself of my performance and my bike position woes. So it was quite a good time actually to research a bit of background knowledge on cycling, reading through Google Scholar and PubMed articles on cycling performance.
Well, it must be quite an interesting route. I'm sure lots of bike fitters don't come into fitting with such an acute awareness of their own body, and then having the opportunity to look at this from an academic perspective as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point, and I think especially for me when I was first starting out, and even sometimes now, I kind of take my route into bike fitting maybe a little bit for granted, and don't really. Well, maybe in the early days, like for instance, when I first started bike fitting professionally, I don't know, I kind of just I'd done a weekend course with Retool, and just like kind of thought I knew everything about bike fit straight away, and I almost kind of left my sports science background behind me, and thought that I'd learned everything in one go. And I think after I'd seen about 10 or 15 paying clients, I very quickly realized that there was a lot that I didn't know about a very niche subject. So sort of ever since the early days of the business, I've just basically not stopped trying to learn or find out a bit more about why I feel like that. And I think that's the exciting thing about fit, is there's so many things going on in a bike position that you really, I'm just constantly searching out people kind of across the world, other bike fitters, and trying to kind of develop little relationships with as many of them as I can, basically so I can just ask them all questions about their experience, which is quite a nice thing actually, that a lot of them are so willing to share, collaborate, because I've definitely learned most about bike fit specific knowledge, if you like, through just conversations with just like experts all over the place really. ISCO is kind of like I don't know, like almost like a bike fitting teaching organization, bike fitting knowledge organization founded by G. Biomeist in Germany. They develop all the pressure sensors that go I don't know, on various riders' saddles, and I've been along to their sort of bike fit symposium a few times, and it's actually not necessarily the symposia themselves, but the people that you meet there, that you can just send them loads of emails and ask them questions. So I think that's one thing I've definitely done over the years consistently, to try and just keep learning more all the time. And another bike fitter I met, actually, a guy called Curtis Cramblett, he's got a bike fitting business in the Bay Area in San Francisco. He's been bike fitting since like day one, before bike fitting was even a thing, 20, 30 years ago. And
Godfather.
Basically the rock star godfather of bike fitting, who charges like £500 for a bike fit for like 2 hours in the Bay Area of San Francisco. So yeah, he's like I don't know, he's like absolute legend of bike fit really. And he's been great because he's come over to my studio a few times, and I can learn more in 1 hour of watching him fit one of my customers than I would learn in weeks doing it, well, months, years even doing it myself. So it's good when he comes over actually, because he seems to have an answer to every question I throw at him with regards to bike fit. Yeah. So I think it's quite fun actually like that, because I think it can be quite lonely just doing bike fit after bike fit all the time, and get a lot more joy when I learn the answer to things that maybe frustrate me during some bike fits that I maybe didn't know before. So yeah.
Well, having spoken to you offline, it seems like a genuine. There are so many data elements and feedback loops and different ways of looking at things. It's a constant process of evolution, and every athlete is so different. That's why it's fascinating to be very kind of you to give your time up to come and discuss some of these elements. We mentioned obviously your academic background and your genuine interest in it, and obviously your gymnastics background, but you've also raced yourself. You've done a bit of racing, and being quite successful in certain disciplines as well, I understand.
Oh, I don't know. I was okay. I got to about sort of second cat level in road racing. I did enjoy it. I just didn't really get on with the courses that were particularly hilly. So,
Yeah,
because I could never
I
really
can
get
relate
light
to
enough.
that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I always loved my bacon rolls and my cakes, maybe a little bit too much to be a great racing cyclist. But then I got quite involved with grass track racing. So I would travel around Scotland during the summer and just race around essentially what would be a bumpy Highland Games field on a track bike that was fixed geared with cross tires, doing like as fast as you could 800-meter sprint races and up to 8K and devils and all sorts. And I managed to do that pretty much full time for almost 2 years. I had like about almost an 18-month period actually of pretty much not having a job, just riding my bike, racing Highland Games circuits. It was two full seasons. It was great actually. It was really good fun. Didn't have any money, but just enough to get by. But
yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's
yeah.
two questions that scream out for me for that. I mean, firstly, how has this not taken off more widespread? It sounds like a tremendous amount of fun. And secondly, for people that don't know, can you give them a bit of an idea in terms of what are the Highland Games? What do they look like? How many people there? What kind of, tell us all about it.
The Scottish Highland Games Association, they're the organizer, if you like, of the events, and it's almost like every town, not every town, but a lot of towns around Scotland, if they put on their games and they're sanctioned by the SHGA, they basically have a bunch of standardized events. Not every games has a track that you can ride bikes around, but basically just imagine thousands of drunk people round a field cheering whilst you're sprinting in a almost circle shape, but often the tracks aren't quite perfect. As I mentioned, the bumps. There's people like throwing cabers on the field and like sprinters, athletes, all sorts. And a lot of the races are handicapped as well to keep it exciting for the crowd. So, even if there's even if there's like a slightly less conditioned guy up the road, the fitter you are, the further back you start, and you've got to make up a huge gap. Sometimes in an 800-meter race, sometimes you're talking up to 100 meters, maybe more actually. Yeah, to catch these people before you can then sprint around them. So if the handicappers call it right, the race could be on right to the last corner. So it's usually a proper sprint to the line. And yet the prize money in a lot of these Highland Games is actually, alarmingly quite good. So you can if you win all of the races that day, you could be going back down the road, with 200, 300, 400 quid, maybe up to, I think the most I won in a day was like almost £600 right up north in Halkirk. And just for riding your bike around a grass field and being able to win. But there's more to it, obviously, than the money. It's a bit of a laugh, and it's the same people you're racing with each week. The whole atmosphere. I think you have to want to do it, but I enjoyed it a lot more because of the crowds than road racing. Plus, I have to say,
I'm completely dumbfounded as to how this is not taken off as a global sport. I mean, I think we should try and set something up and roll it out across the world.
I don't know.
It sounds so much fun, and no hills as well.
No hills. Yeah, it's honestly, it's mind blowing how good it is. Have you ever heard of a cycling photographer called Gerard Gruber?
Yes.
So believe it or not, he's quite. I didn't realize he's particularly well known actually. So I randomly met him in Edinburgh through a mutual, not necessarily even friend. And anyway, I told him the next day I was going to this Highland Games in Pentlochry to race my bike. And he was like, oh, that sounds super interesting. So anyway, he came along and Gerard Gruber ended up spending the whole day taking pictures of me racing my grass track bike around the field, which is like, yeah.
Can you share some of those photos with us? We'd love to see some of those.
Do you know, actually, maybe we can appeal to him to share them, because he spent the whole day taking photos of me, and I still actually haven't seen any of them other than on his camera on the day. This would have been 5-6 years ago. So he said I've messaged him a few times, and he's emailed me back saying at one day he'll have the time to go through his camera and find them. But yeah, so sadly I've never seen those photos, but they were pretty good as far as I saw. So I don't know.
So if anyone knows him, give him a nudge. I think his wife's a famous photographer as well, right? Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Amazing, brilliant photographer as well. I love some of his images.
Yeah, you should. If you haven't, by the way, if you're listening to this and haven't been on their website, is it Gruber Images? I think.
Yeah.
Oh, just unbelievable.
Good. Well, I think when lockdown is over, I'm going to find a field somewhere, and maybe we can get you down, or we'll come up, and we should do some track, some grass track sprinting. Yeah, with a handicap. I really like the sound of that bit as well.
It's the best
very
bit.
Good. Yeah, very good. So moving back onto the fitting bit, before we sort of delve into sort of main topic of today, I'd really be keen to get your views in terms of who should have a bike fit, how often, and why.
Who should have a bike fit, how often, and why? So the how often bit is if you've got any problems that you're not sure about, and that kind of leads nicely into the why. So if you've got problems, or if you want to know that you're as optimal as you can be, and how often would be if your goals change. For instance, if you were really interested in getting comfortable on your bike, or really interested in maybe trying to pursue a more advanced position, that would be maybe a sign that you could definitely go down the route of researching a fitter in your area. And there maybe by the time you're injured, by the way, I should say, it's sometimes not necessarily too late, because it's never too late, but a lot of the time if you're worried maybe about getting injured, you should definitely go and see if you can get your alignment checked in your sort of like feet, knees, hips sort of cleat position.
So Doug, you just interject there. When you say if you're worried about getting injured, is if you've got subconsciously you're worried about your cleat position, or you get a slight bit of pain somewhere, or is it too late by the time you feel something?
No, I guess it's not too late. But see, for instance, if you could imagine you have a bank account of health in any given joint or any part of your body, and if you imagine if your position isn't quite right, every time you go on the ride, you take out a little bit of money, or a little bit of sort of body health out that account. And the resting in between is like you putting back in. And if you imagine over the course of 6 months, you gradually become overdrawn, and then one day, you get a nasty bill from the bank for giving you an overdraft statement, and that's your little injury. So it's almost like a process. Like, for instance, if you don't have a good alignment, the chances are you're not going to know about it until it's very deep set, and your body is moving in not necessarily terribly wild ways, but you definitely will have developed a compensation by the time you've got a nasty injury, for sure. So I think a lot of the time in bike fits, I tend to, once I've done a lot of the obvious changes, so for instance, if someone's got a saddle that's far too high, or the reach is far too long, and I sort that out, you start to be able to pick up problem movement patterns. So for instance, maybe they're sitting slightly to the side of the saddle, or they're sitting forward on one side, or for whatever reason. And usually that's because they're using a dominant side, or that's because they're protecting a side that's slightly sore, but again, totally subconsciously. And or perhaps one side of the body is able to go through the range of motion that the pedal stroke is putting them through. These are all very body related issues that can interfere with your fit, and that's kind of really
just on that note, very quickly there. Sorry to interject again. What about leg length discrepancies? How does that come into that?
Yeah, well, you could imagine you have to be very careful how you treat leg length discrepancies for a number of different reasons. So, but if you could imagine, sometimes it's like you've got what you would call like a functional leg length difference and a structural leg length difference. So structural being the bones in your leg are 2 centimeters shorter because you've maybe broken your leg, or you were maybe just born that way for whatever reason. And you've got someone who, for instance, if you could imagine, has a really tight back on the right-hand side, or a really tight hip right-hand side, and that causes them to maybe twist on the bike forward on that same side. So say my right hip and my right quad were really tight, and my entire body was leaning forward on that right-hand side. That would mean that my right leg is essentially closer to the bottom bracket than my left leg. So at the bottom of the pedal stroke, my left leg would appear to be really straight in a video analysis, and my right leg would appear to be quite bent. But actually, there's no difference in length. So sometimes in these cases, you're actually better recommending they go and see a good physio, or maybe giving them a couple of basic exercises off the back of their fit, like stretches or strengthening to encourage maybe the other side. It just depends what's wrong. So say they're really using this right hand side because it's a really dominant, much stronger side, and the reason they're not using the left is just because it's nice, like we're really weak. Then you could maybe suggest they just do some strengthening. And there's various ways you can test that, of course, but without getting into that. And then sometimes I'll run out of talent with that and just send them off to a physio and get a physio's recommendation, and then get them back in once they've sorted their problems out, to see if I can maybe get the saddle in an even better position again.
Yeah.
So this is the thing: a good bike fit can be a bit of a process depending on what's wrong. Sometimes the stem's just too long, or the cranks are too long, or the saddle's the wrong shape, and you need a different, you basically need to get different components to sort someone out properly. But a lot of the time you're trying to maybe identify, you're identified bad movement, and if it's a body problem, then no stem in the world is going to sort that, if you know what I mean. You need to get that sorted. So it really is just you're just looking all the time as to, how can I get this person in a better position? How do I improve them? And getting back to the original question on leg length discrepancy, yes, you do have, for instance, you could wedge, or not necessarily wedge, but shim out a difference in leg length. But you have to be very careful with what you're doing there, because if you could imagine, if you could imagine the center of the pedal spindle is the sort of center of rotation when you push down on a pedal. If you stack up a foot, maybe up to a centimeter of additional stack on one side, you're actually taking your foot further away from the center of rotation of that pedal. You're going to lose dexterity in that foot, so you're going to lose feeling of connection. You're increasing the torque on that center of rotation as well. So you could kind of be solving one problem of leg length difference and creating a problem of like a really unstable, say my right leg was shorter and we'd shimmed it up to a centimeter. We would have a really unstable right foot. So you'd have to be very careful as to, you don't just blanket shim because you've been told by one physio one day that you had 1 centimeter leg length difference. So you go and find a centimeter's worth of shims. You have to kind of, I guess, either find a fitter that you want to experiment with, or you have to just, don't do it all in one go, is all I'm saying, because you could end up with, particularly bad Achilles tendonitis. That happens quite a lot with over shimming. I've seen that a few times.
Really?
Yeah. And that's a big problem, because then, the only way to solve tendonitis usually is to just rest, which means not riding your bike, which is a big problem for a lot of people that will be listening to this.
Yeah, that sounds horrific, actually.
Yeah. Oh, it's a pain in the arse. Not being able to ride.
Yeah. Okay, so we were talking. The original question was who should get a bike fit and
why and when
and why. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think who should get a bike fit. I mean, you could break it down into different classifications. I see a lot of girls and guys that have very busy jobs and very busy home life, and basically the bike for them is escapism and also just enjoyment, and they don't want to bother trying to spend hours working out how to get the right saddle position. They just come and pay me to do it. I have people that maybe have just reached the limit of self-experimentation after, quite rightfully giving it a go themselves. And I see people that want to eke out extra performance. I see people that are really suffering with pain on their bike ride, and they don't necessarily want a bike fit. They just almost see that they need one, as a sense. Yeah, loads of people should get a bike fit. It just, if you think that you're maybe missing out on getting everything out of your body potentially because of lack of alignment on the pedals, or you worry that you might be injuring yourself if you have bad alignment, or I don't know, you're asking the wrong man, because any cyclist
yeah.
I think it's one thing I would say, if you're on the fence, is if you search out a very good bike fitter, you usually learn quite a lot about how your body moves on the bike, and if you can arm yourself with the right questions and go, you could learn a lot about how you interact with the pedals or how you interact with the saddle that can inform your decisions going forward as to what saddles and handlebars are right for you. Or for instance, if you're considering buying a new bike, one of the best bits and the most well-used bits of equipment in my bike fit studio is my adjustable bike. So for instance, I can match that up to the stack and reach of pretty much any bike frame that I can find online. So I see a lot of people that, this is a good example, want to buy a Canyon.
Okay, yeah.
they'll just come and ask me what size, and I can set my adjustable bike up to match that exactly, and tell them what length stem they'll need, tell them what length crank they'll need, tell them what saddle they'll need, tell them what stem, bar, everything that they would need to be purchasing to kind of fulfill the position that they find most optimal, and we found for them to be most optimal based on their goals that day. So
and going one beyond that, are there better bike brands, better geometries for different individuals?
Yeah. So for instance, so a good example here would be I also sell bikes, I should say. So this kind of bleeds into the story a little bit, where a guy had been looking at a particular brand of bike and a particular model of bike because he liked the look of it. And it was a special occasion for him. It was his 50th birthday, and he'd always really wanted like a proper, no budget, nothing, like hidden cables, really, great looking deep section bikes, everything, all the Di2 in the world, all that. And so based on the best size for him, I set up the adjustable bike in the studio and sat him on it. And within 10 seconds, even he acknowledged that the handlebars were so far away from the from the saddle that he just would never have been comfortable, and it would have been a waste of £6,000-7,000 easy. And there's no stretching or core exercise in the world that would have fitted in enough with his lifestyle to make that bike a good choice for him. So we were able to really get absolutely everything sorted to the length crank. He actually ended up having loads of problems with his hip flexion, so he ended up needing to go down to really short cranks and wide pedals, and a couple of different choices of saddle and bar width, and it was just he just ended up basically spending his money in a much better way. And I guess like maybe rather than going for an aero geometry with a really long reach and a really low stack, he went for an endurance geometry frame. But he was able to still have a fairly aggressive position by the time we shortened the cranks, but not as low as the frame would have limited him to. So he was able just to get a bit more out of his bike. And a lot of bikes, for instance, in terms of once you've made your purchase, you could buy a bike with a really integrated front end. So if you need a shorter stem, well, you basically are stuffed because you can't shorten it enough to work for you. So you're always going to be uncomfortable. But yeah, there's different bikes for different people. I see a lot of workers that sit down quite a lot all day, so they have very, very tight lower backs and very tight hamstrings, and that has a lot of implications as to what their pelvis does. For instance, when they reach forward to the handlebars, that just tends to really pull everything forward and create a lot of soft tissue discomfort, if you like, on the nose of the saddle if the bars are too far away or too low. So if you've bought a bike with geometry that is very aggressive, you're going to have a hard time and potentially compromise the handling characteristics of your bike geometry and head tube angles and all the rest of it if you shorten a stem too much and raise the bars. So you have to be careful. You have to make sure that geometry is right for your position if you're wanting to get the most out of the bike.
Yeah, definitely. And I bet that's probably the most common thing you see in terms of the tight hip flexors, tight lower back. That's something certainly I can relate to, and I'm sure many others can as well. Is there anything that people can be doing off the bike to help address that or help ease that in any sense? And if they are working off the bike and make gains with regards to stretching, that is obviously another reason to continuously bike fit or tweak or change or have that ongoing relationship with the bike fitter.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I would encourage anyone who's interested. I mean, you don't have to go back forever, but if you really want to get more out of your bike and it's something that you're interested to do, then finding a good bike fitter in your area and developing a good relationship with them where you can just talk through all your issues and be really patient. And I guess the main thing is like set your expectation and be wary of a bike fitter that will promise you the perfect position within 2 to 3 hours, because I'm telling you right now, unless I don't know. I think it's impossible to get someone absolutely perfect forever in 2 to 3 hours. And I think just being willing to go through a process with someone that you trust is I guess the best way to do it. Yeah. Sorry. What was the original question? Just because I think I felt I was digressing a bit too much there.
No, I was talking about stretching and
you're stretching. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So best things to do. I mean, I actually, on a Monday night, I actually run a cycling strength conditioning and flexibility class specifically for this problem. Yeah. So I did see a lot of guys that were and girls that were maybe a little bit too weak in their glutes, or maybe a little bit too tight in their lower back, and just take them through in a nice, safe environment all the stretches and exercises that I guess I would be recommending to people. And I also, on not necessarily my staff, but we've got a guy who's sort of a physio and a medical doctor as well. So he's like really knowledgeable and really experienced in sport. And it's good to have him on hand as well, just to run things past if someone has particular issues, say with a lack of flexibility somewhere. I've got a good relationship with a few physios in Edinburgh that I send people to. And people that are listening, I mean, the obvious one would be like yoga or Pilates, but there's no secret really. If you're inflexible, the the only way to get more flexible is to consider stretching and then actually doing it. And so whatever works for you. I mean, I tend to encourage people that are really limited in flexibility just to start off really basic. I mean, literally even stretching for 10 seconds is infinitely better than doing nothing. So if you've got tight hamstrings, just thinking about it's probably going to be hurting your sit bones on your saddle, for instance, if your hamstrings are very tight. So just, I know there's loads of videos on YouTube or Instagram for people to do their own research. I think the main thing I could do right now is to encourage people to, if they are very inflexible and they seem to be having lots of issues on their bike, maybe putting 2 and 2 together and just encouraging them that it will be worth it to get more out of their bike for sure. Yeah, I don't know if that.
Yeah, that's great to me. That's great to know. It's so easy to sort of neglect that side to conditioning, and you're right. I think a lot of people know that they need to do it, probably don't do as much as they should.
I guess,
in terms of what we want. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, all I was going to say is, like, for instance, just like a little example of this. I think it's maybe important. So if you sit off, if you just jump off your bike, or if you just sort of where you're standing, if you just do a squat, if you're really struggling to get low into your squat, then if you liken the top of a pedal stroke to a very similar range of motion. So if you're not able to sort of get your bum lower than if you like 90 degrees with your knees off the bike, then don't expect your body to be able to generate loads of power in that position over the top of the pedal stroke on it. So it's just a good way, I guess, of finding out if you've got problems that are big enough that would need addressing.
Well, I am super bad at squatting. I've literally, as you've said that, done it, and I'm going to send you a photo just to demonstrate. Basically, that's about as far as I can go. I've just sent it.
I'll see this. Well, actually, do that again with your feet a little bit wider, and then do it again with your feet set to the same width as they'd be restricted to on the pedal stroke, and you'll very quickly realize if you need wider axle pedals or not, if it's much easier when your feet are wider. That's another little thing you can do. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot easier when the feet are wider.
Shimano actually have a really wide, they have a plus 4mm pedal spindle that I recommend quite a lot to people with a little bit of trouble getting low in a squat. You probably find they're more comfortable. And then Speedplay, they're not right for everyone, but Speedplay have extra long spindles. This is another one, actually. Stance width is pretty huge with Bike Fit, and it's one of the things that is the most underrated, I reckon, especially for people that don't really care about losing their aerodynamic properties. Considering increasing your stance width is probably one of the best things you could do to get more comfortable.
I hadn't even heard of widening stance width of the bike, to be honest with you, until you mentioned it when we spoke. Right?
If you have bandy knees, you should really consider it. legs that go out when you're standing, if you struggle to get your knees together, or if you don't have that problem, even if you struggle to get into a low squat, you would probably find that there's a few issues, especially on like if you feel like you've got a feeling of pinching, not necessarily on the soft tissue, but right in the creases of your leg. If you really struggle with pinching or chafing there, then just take off your cycling shoes and put on your flat shoes, and just set your feet a little bit wider than your cleats would let you normally have your feet. Just a couple of mil at first, and then go wider. And you'll probably, hopefully you'll find some improvement as you go wider. That could be a nice little feedback loop for you to do. Or if you've got some pedal washers, experiment with just putting a couple of mil. You don't really want to go more with pedal washers than a couple of mil, because you could wreck your crank, and I don't want to be responsible for that. So just be careful.
Very good. There's so much to talk about. It's crazy. And obviously we want to talk about the turbo element, and we will hopefully get you in to do some more. I thought shoes and cleats would be a good one to do in the future, because I think cleat positioning and shoes as well, that there are so many dimensions just to that one topic, aren't there?
Oh, massive, yeah.
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 Okay, so we'll leave that to another day. But let's, given everyone's in lockdown, or most people around the world are in lockdown, let's have a little chat around position, not only on the turbo, but also what people can do while they're spending so much time on the turbo to maybe think or be a little bit more conscious about their positions. How do you want to kick this one off?
I guess the best thing I would say is feedback loops. So what you're wanting to try and do is work out if you've got an issue. And the other thing I would say as well is on this note, before we get started, is quite a lot of the time where you're feeling a problem is. So for instance, you could have quite heavy weighted hands on the handlebars and feel that you get a sore neck and sore shoulders and maybe numb hands after a while. That's quite a common one. Quite a lot of the time, you could those issues could be coming from the saddle, for instance. So a good way of testing that would be if you're sitting on your bike just now, you could be asking yourself, do my hands feel light, medium, or heavy? It's like the first question. So do my hands feel quite light, as in hardly any weight? Medium, as in there's a little bit of weight, but I'm in quite an aggressive position, and I'm trying to pursue an aero aggressive position, so maybe that's okay. Or do my hands feel really heavy, like this? This shouldn't be this heavy. There's a problem here. Now, the first thing I would do if I was trying to sort this out and I was on a turbo trainer would be to make sure your bike's level, and you can do that really easily by just taking a tape measure from the floor to the front axle and seeing where the axle of the turbo trainer that you've got is, and just making sure that your bike's level, or if you've got a really long spirit level, making sure your bike's level, because if your bike's pointing downhill, then you're always going to have more weight on your hands. So that's the first thing I would do. So if you've got quite heavy hands, there's a couple of things that could be going on. Do you have quite a big shoulder angle? Is there a chance that your stem is too long? If you were to film yourself from the side, is it sort of saying the obvious thing that you look like you're trying to hold a Graham O'Brien style Superman position? and in that case, if your saddle is all the way back, as far back as it can go, or your stem is really long, or your frame seems really long, then if you've got a spare stem lying around, that might help. But from there, the next thing you could do is you could just build up a pedal stroke on your bike, on your turbo, and just without...
I'm going to do this now, by the way, while I'm speaking. I've just jumped on the bike. Oh, you're doing it?
Okay, right. So what I want you to do is to, without pushing yourself off the handlebars, just at 2 hands at a time, lift yourself up to an upright position whilst you're pedaling, and let me know when you've done that. Okay, now are you pedaling?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I want you to do is 2 hands at a time, just go as far forward as you can go towards the hood, and let me know when you lose control and you feel like you fall into the hoods, or are you able to control that the whole way to the hoods?
I'm a bit lopsided. I feel easier to do it. I can get quite far forward on my left leg than my right.
Are you pedaling?
Does that make sense? Yeah, on the pedal stroke. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So when your left leg's forward, you feel it's easier to control yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. So this is a different thing. Okay. So one thing I would say is if you felt like there's like a lack of control there in the instance, I would ask you to then keep pedaling, but sit up tall with your hands totally off the handlebars.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel like you're completely planted, or do you feel like you're getting tilted forwards, or do you feel that your bum is sliding down the saddle?
No, I feel pretty planted.
You feel pretty planted. Okay.
Yeah, pretty planted and balanced. Yeah.
Okay. So let's ask you the question to start with. When you go back to the hands on the hoods, do you feel light, medium, or heavy?
They feel okay. They feel medium, I'd say. Medium.
Okay. Do you have an even sensation of pressure across the hands? Or do you feel like you've got more weight at the back of your hand or the front of your hand?
More weight at the back of the hand, probably.
Okay, that's quite an interesting one. Are your hoods completely level as they come off the handlebars?
Yes, they are.
They are level, okay, but you do feel like you've got more weight at the back of your hands.
They're probably slightly raised, actually.
Oh, so they could be tilting your hands up and pushing the weight back. So a good way to do that particular one would be to get an Allen key, loosen off the bolt that is connecting your hood to the handlebar just enough so that you can move it, but not so that the bolt falls out. And I want you to get the hood positioned until it feels like it creates a completely even sensation of pressure across the top of your hand between your thumb and first finger and the base of your hand, so that sort of differential in pressure goes away. And then another thing you can do actually just before you do that is I want you to loosen off the bolts of your stem again whilst you're on the turbo, just loose enough that you could move your handlebar round, but not loose enough so that you're obviously going to fall off your bike. But I want you to then sort of put your hands on the drops of the bar and rotate it until you feel like you've got a nice even sensation of pressure across the hand. Tighten the handlebar in that position before you start moving the hoods around, so that you know that when you're on the drops, you're in a comfortable position at the same time as you can go up to the hoods and also have your hand position even.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing to do if you're worried about bar setup, and if you're struggling to do both of those things, for instance, be able to reach the shifters on and brakes on the drops and have an even sensation of pressure across your hand on the hoods, you might want to consider maybe going to like a compact reach bar if you've got smaller hands, and a compact drop bar, because it's way easier to set them up comfortable on the drops and comfortable on the hoods for beginners and even some advanced riders as well. It's just much more comfortable. So I think we were getting a bit lost there. So when I was asking you, do you feel planted on the saddle? Well, if you don't feel planted on the saddle when you sit up, so we've kind of moved on from the handlebars now, one of the things that I would want you to be thinking about is the saddle level? Is the saddle structurally sound? So for instance, if you jump off your bike, if you're still on it, and you go from the nose to the back of the saddle. So let me know what sort of angle your saddle's looking at. Quite level?
Yeah, very level.
Okay, so that's probably why your hands feel. That's probably why you feel nice and stacked when you sit up off the handlebars, because your saddle's quite level. Now, if you press the middle of your saddle down, does your saddle stay firm or does it deform like a lot?
No, it's a very firm saddle.
Yeah. Okay. So if your saddle deforms quite a lot, then with your fingers, then imagine what your saddle's doing when you're sitting on it with all your weight. If you could imagine, you've got where the saddle rails feed into the nose and where they connect to the back of the saddle. Those are the two reinforced points. If the middle of your saddle is deforming a lot, well then essentially that's not providing any support. So the only place you can be getting support is right on the sort of back of your bum cheeks and basically on your soft tissue on the nose of the saddle.
Yeah, ouch.
So that's another pretty big one actually, and even some relatively new saddles, if they've been, I see sometimes people with even quite good saddles that were quite expensive that have been set in the wrong position and they've just been deformed. Or for instance, the saddle is brand new, but it wasn't ever structurally sound in the middle. Your pelvis actually relies on a fairly, not necessarily like rock hard saddle, but like a saddle that doesn't deform, so that as you sit on a saddle and your pelvis rotates forward, you actually want to be able to load the bilateral hard tissue, so that you call it the pubic rami, on your pelvis. So as you rotate forward, you've got some connection to the saddle there. So not the middle of the middle is soft tissue, but either side of your soft tissue are these sort of pubic bones, and you want to be sure that you're loading them, because so you've got a nice even loading of pressure across the hard tissue when you're riding.
Yeah,
so
that you want to spread the pressure right as wide as possible.
And if your pelvis is well supported, then the chances are you've got a nice stabilized saddle. Now, if you feel that you've got a lot of pressure on your hard tissue, so not necessarily even sit bones at the back, but like pressure on the hard tissue towards the front of the saddle, you've got a nice firm saddle, say even with a channel in it, but you're still having soft tissue issues or pressure issues that lead to numbness, then the chances are that your saddle could be maybe in the wrong position, so maybe too high, or maybe your handlebars are too low. So there's ways that you can work that out. So if the bars are too low, then the chances are you're losing control as we do that feedback loop from sitting up tall, 2 hands at a time, to going forward to the hoods and seeing if you can maintain control the whole way without kind of having a jerky drop onto the hoods. If you can't do that, or if you're losing control really early on and falling onto the hoods heavily, try raising them up and doing that again, and you'll probably find it's a bit lighter on your hands all in.
A bit more control. Yeah. Just going back one step to the saddle piece that I just had a question about.
Yeah.
That people might be thinking, if they're doing these tests at home, Do saddles have a life length? I mean, do saddles sort of wear out to the point that they need to be changed? If they're getting soft there, what do you see in terms of life expectancy of a saddle?
It varies based on if it's been in the wrong position all its life and you're loading the front of it up, then sometimes it can wear away. Some saddles, for example, I've got a Pro Stealth, which is a very hard saddle. It's got a carbon reinforced underside and it doesn't really deform even if it's been in the wrong position or if it's quite set back. So yeah, there is a shelf life, I would say. Some old saddles, if you're just really struggling with them and you can't seem to get them to work, just try that one. If it's it's saggy and it resembles like a hammock almost, then and you also feel like there's a lot of weight on your hands, you've got to question whether or not your pelvis is being stabilized or supported enough. And in terms of how long they last, because it's so variable, it's difficult for me to give you an answer, but it could be a couple of years, it could be a couple of weeks if it's been in the wrong place, or if some saddles are out the box crap, basically crap saddles that you don't want to be buying. Difficult to give you an example of brands, but generally the cheaper ones, almost all of the really cheap saddles, or if you get a bike on the cheaper end of the spectrum, the stock saddles that come with bikes, they quite typically don't have enough structural support between the mounting points of the rails on the saddle. So consider buying a half decent aftermarket saddle, even if it's the wrong width, because you've not checked that out before you've bought it. As long as it's got some structure there, the chances are you're going to be loading your pelvic structure better than before. But that's another thing actually with saddles, getting the right width is quite important. And it's not just as simple as sitting on I don't know if you've seen this in some shops, they sit you on and measure your sit bone width in an upright position to see what saddle width you need. Are you aware of that? Have you seen that?
Yeah, I mean, I have seen that, but talk me through the difference between saddle width. What kind of person needs a wider one, a smaller one? How does that work?
There's no correlation between sort of sit bone width, if you like, and sort of and height. So just because you're really tall doesn't mean you need a wide saddle. Just because you're really short doesn't mean you need a narrow one. It's all about being able to sit on the saddle. Then there's a few factors here. If you have a very upright bike position, then your pelvis is going to be kind of essentially rocked backwards. So you're going to be more prominently sitting on your sit bones. And if that's the position that you find most comfortable, chances are you're going to need a wider saddle, because as you rotate your pelvis forward, everyone's pelvis, unless they've broken it, is a triangle. So wider at the back where your two prominent sit bones are, and narrower at the front towards what we said before was the pubic rami bones. As you rotate forward and as you load them more, that's why a lot of aggressive racing saddles tend to get narrower at the front, because your pelvic structure is narrower at the front, so it can be loaded with a narrower saddle. So it does depend. If you sit up really tall on one of these kind of sit bone measuring devices, it can be quite deceiving as to sit bone width. You have to experiment. It's better than doing nothing, and if you're buying completely blind otherwise, then it would be wise to start with that tool and pick a couple of saddles up. The ideal thing that you would be wanting to do is trying to follow some of the feedback loops that we've been talking about with regards to setting it up. Is it firm? Is it fairly level? Another one, actually, getting your saddle at the right height. Even if your saddle is far too low, the chances are you're going to have saddle problems. If the saddle is far too high, the chances are you're going to have saddle problems. Even if everything else on your bike is perfect.
Okay, to interject there, a very quick saddle height check. Then the old heel on the pedal, is that correct sort of roughly check saddle height?
You could start with that, but it totally depends on your cleat position, your pedals, your crank length as well. It'll definitely make sure that you can reach it. A nice dynamic one, because the thing is, as soon as you start pedaling, a lot of these static feedback loops are almost useless. But what you could do is you could sit on your bike and you could just unclip one of your feet and pedal backwards, just nice and slowly. I don't know if you want to do this for me just now.
Hang on, let me do this now.
Yeah.
I took the shoes off actually because
right.
I did a turbo this morning and they're a bit wet.
They're a bit smelly.
They're a bit wet, yeah. So let me get back on. Give me 1 second. Right, so I'm back on now.
Okay, so what you want to do is just unclip one of your feet while you're sitting on the turbo, and just let that. Which one is it? Left foot or right foot?
I've unclipped my right foot.
So you've unclipped your right foot. So just let that right foot just dangle for me off the pedal and to the side, so it's not in the way. and I want you to just pedal backwards nice and slowly. Pedal backwards. That's it. Yeah. So over the top of the pedal stroke, do you feel like there's a clunky, kind of jerky spot? And through the bottom of the pedal stroke, do you feel like you've got complete control the whole way through the bottom of the pedal stroke?
Over the top is fine. And at the bottom's okay, actually, yeah. I tell you what I do feel. I feel tightness in my hip flexors over the top.
Over the top of the pedal stroke, okay.
Yeah, I feel in control of it. And I feel pretty much in control at the bottom as well.
Pretty much in control at the bottom.
I generally feel in control.
Try that on the drops.
On the drops, yeah. Yeah, good.
Tighter over the top?
Yeah, tighter in the hip flexor. Blimey.
Yeah. Try probably because your pelvis is rocking back. So have a quick think for me. Do your sit bones feel more prominent if you stop right at the top of the pedal stroke?
Yeah.
How do your hands feel? How does your sit bones feel on your saddle compared to at the bottom?
With one leg unclipped, I feel I have more pressure on my hands.
Yeah, your body's really pushing. Do that on the other side now. So what I want you to do is go back to the hoods and clip in the right foot and unclip the left.
So I've just clipped in my right foot and that pressure's already immediately come off my hands.
Yeah, so you're a bit more supported by your feet as well.
Yeah. I've unclipped my left foot now and I'm paddling backwards in the drops with my right leg.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't have the gripping in the hip.
So that's smoother.
Yeah, smoother, and I'm in control the whole way around, really.
So you're in control through the bottom as well. So this is an interesting. So for you, if you're at home, and I guess not necessarily you, Jules, but if you're listening, if you really struggled through the bottom of the pedal stroke, for instance, you had a really jerky kind of almost feeling of like your as you pedaled backwards and as you were beginning to go from approaching the bottom of the pedal stroke to approaching like going up the top as you go forward, I would be sort of questioning. So if you lose control at the bottom, I would be thinking, maybe experiment with maybe putting your saddle a little bit lower and seeing if you can gain some control through the bottom of the pedal stroke now. That'd be one thing you could do. It's cleat position also has quite a big influence on this feedback loop. So, and that's going to be definitely another podcast, by the way. But but then also, whilst we're at it on this feedback loop, you mentioned that you had tightness in your hip on that was it on that left side when your right foot was unclipped? Yeah. So I would immediately be asking you.
I always in my head feel that my right hip is the tighter of the two hips, but maybe not.
I mean, I would be asking for differences. I'd certainly be investigating for differences in strength, differences in available range of motion, injury history between left and right, and dominance as well. But if I get you to clip into that left-hand side for me one more time and go on to the drops again and pedal, if you pedal backwards and just speed it up this time to like a normal cadence.
Backwards?
If you pedal backwards again a little bit.
Pedal backwards, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
In the drops.
So what I'm hearing is that pedal accelerating downwards quite fast compared to how fast it's going up, yeah. And pedal forwards, do the same thing when you pedal forwards. Just at a normal cadence. And I can hear the turbo isn't as smooth as you push down.
No, it's not.
Yeah. So that I would be. So there's a problem there anyway. There's a problem somewhere. Could be because the crank's too long. It could be that the shoe's not quite right. It could be because the cleat isn't quite right. But what you're looking for there, it sounds basically like that part of the pedal stroke for you is causing a problem. And the reason why I've got you to unclip one foot and kind of listening out to what the other side is doing is if you want to really get perfect on the bike, you have to sort of really break down and work out, right, is there a problem on one side compared to the other? Because a bike is completely symmetrical in every way, so you have to be willing to accept that you have to take both sides into account. So the chances are that impediment over the top of the pedal stroke on that left hand side, you're probably compensating for that somewhere. So be interested at some point to look at your bike position from a video link, or maybe even come and have a look at you riding your bike and see if we could make that smoother.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll come on to the video link bit in a second, but I had one more question prior to discussing that with you, is that some people we've spoken to, and indeed you were on the group ride on Sunday, feel that they have bike comfort issues on the turbo that they don't feel outside. Are there any reasons why that might be? And is there anything that people can do?
There are a couple of things that are going on there. If you think about part of when you're outside and you're pedaling, there's a lot more distraction, if you like. So this is the first thing. Like you're always going to be more acutely aware of how you're feeling inside, even if you are riding on Zwift, because you're slightly less distracted by wind, you're slightly less distracted by cars and potholes and all the rest of it. So there's that having your body's ability to perceive things is you've only got a certain bandwidth, and you're certainly more focused inside on what you're feeling and how you're feeling. But that's only part of the picture. I sort of would tend to sort of say that generally when you're pedaling inside, if you look at everything that's going on, the chances are that you're going to be struggling more with heating. So you're going to be running a bit hotter because you're not having the wind cooling you down. The chances are, because of that and some other reasons, your power output is going to be slightly lower. And over the course of 1 hour, 2 hours, if you think about as you push down in the pedal stroke, if you've got that equal and opposite reaction of that downward force pushing you back up. If you've got less power going down, there's going to be if you've got power going down, there's going to be an unweighting effect on the saddle, and you just don't have that same effect inside if the power is lower than when you're outside. And you can look at this in literature as well. A couple of things I've just punched into Google Scholar as we were preparing this, because we were talking about this before we were on this podcast, for anyone that's thinking I've just got a well-timed. If you look at an analysis of variability in power output during indoor and outdoor cycling time trials, authors here, Owen Jeffreys, Mark Waldron, if you read the study, you could sort of see like conclusions, like findings indicate a greater magnitude of variability in power outputs during cycling outdoors. And I'm just like reading abstracts and not really looking through, but then I'm really kicking myself because I looked into this and researched this, and I didn't actually. I read a study and I didn't note down the authors, but if you look at the subjects. Yeah, this is a really good one. Reliability of mean power recorded during indoor and outdoor self-paced 40k time trials. If you like M.F. Smith, Davidson, authors. This is a study done in 2000. There's a nice table of mean power outputs between 8 subjects, indoors and outdoors, and you're looking at average powers up to 30 watts lower inside, for the same rating of perceived exertion, basically for the same task, like a sort of self-paced 40k time trial. So if you're definitely, there's evidence there. I mean, I think the pressure on a saddle inside, given it's the other thing actually I should say from a bike fit perspective is if you are used to riding in a certain position outside, and then you've got your crappy winter bike, which is now your turbo bike inside, and it doesn't have the same saddle on it, it's not in the same position, that's going to be another pretty big reason, without even going into sort of the human physiology level of why. But the problem is with cycling, because your body was never designed to comfortably ride a bike for 3-4 hours plus, unless you do your best to take care of the variables, you're almost certainly always going to have issues unless you're willing to spend a bit of time just setting things up and making sure you get them right.
Yeah, we obviously talked about some of those points. You very kindly talked about a few things that people can test at home over the next day or two. The one thing to mention that we also discussed off air was just really ensuring that the bike on the turbo is horizontal. So basically taking that spirit level between the two axes.
Yeah, that's like the main, making sure, because if you're trying to make sure your saddle's level, for instance, and then your bike's pointing down by a few degrees, then that's going to cause problems outside with soft tissue as the saddle points up, and vice versa.
And also laterally as well. You know, if your floor's not even, that's going to put more pressure on one side of one leg side of it as well. So that's also important.
The chances are there's going to be a lot of people listening to this that have loads of Cycling Plus magazines that they've read once or not even at all lying around. They're perfect turbo spacers.
Get them.
Yeah,
that's quite handy for me. We've just had some building work here, so I've actually got those building spacers that I've got propping up one side of the turbo. So that was quite handy.
That's it. Yeah, before you make any adjustments or make any sort of decision on what angle your saddle is or looks like, make sure your bike is level first. And then before you make any annoying mistakes that you'll have to go and fix, it'll cause you time.
Yeah. So there's some great tips for everyone to have a go on at home. And obviously one of the things that you're doing as a business at the moment during lockdown is basically offering people to do, is it a video audit? Is that correct? Just sort of make a sort of an overall audit of bike position?
Yeah, so it's obviously not quite the same because some elements are just it's always a little bit easier when you're in the studio and you've got access to a bit of technology to make some questions a little bit easier to solve. But there's a lot that you can achieve by sending over a couple of video clips of yourself and pictures of your bike position. So we're offering essentially an online video based bike fit session where you can basically send us your videos and I can come back to you with some suggestions. And if you want to book basically a 90-minute consultation, we're charging a fee for that. Yeah, and usually it's a sort of an action-packed hour and a half where you can learn loads about the way that you ride a bike.
Yeah, perfect. Well, obviously, we've seen from my tight, grippy left hip that's something I'm very keen to do. So, how do people find you? We can put some information up on the hub, and obviously, what people need to send you a video from the front and the side and the back, both sides, probably.
Yeah.
Or email you in the first instance just to make contact. And
so you could go to edinburghbikefitting.com, and I've actually on the homepage you'll see what we offer. And just the other day I was updating the website and there's an option there for online bike fitting. You'll see it on the page. So that's just edinburghbikefitting.com, or you could email me on just contact@edinburghbikefitting.com, and I'm sure we can put a couple of links up to the website and just my email address and contact details if anyone would like to arrange just a conversation or just some feedback on their position. That'd be great.
Superb. Well, as I said, I will definitely be doing that, and I encourage anyone else that's just why we got this time. If you have any sort of niggles or just sort of questions in the back of your head potentially about bike fit, do reach out to Dougie. He's tremendously experienced and got a fantastic reputation, so I'm sure he'll be more than happy to help. And why don't I do the audit with you, Dougie? Next time we do the shoe and cleat episode, we can sort of talk through some of the things that you found about my bike position and some of the tweaks we made just to give people an idea of how it works.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, perfect.
Excellent. Are there any other questions or things that you wanted to sort of raise with regards to turbo riding or sort of tweaking things internally?
I mean, I guess one of the things we talked about the other day was just how to find a good fitter in your area. If you do feel that you want to find someone, just if you Google the IBFI and bike fit, it'll take you to International Bike Fitting Institute's website. It's just ibfi-certification.com, just to give them a big shout out. If it's probably the best way if you can't find any good recommendations locally for a bike fitter that is any good, then if they've actually got a find a fitter section on their website.
Fantastic. And obviously, and I think you were telling me that they're rated on the website as well, and they're peer reviewed, so it's pretty robust. Is that correct?
Yeah, you really have to. I mean, obviously, everyone's got to start somewhere, like I did as well. And so there's different levels. There's like level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, and it's based on combination of different elements. So they look at any academic background. They look at how many bike fits you've done. They look at if you've got saddles available for you to try, for instance. Just different bits of technology, kicking around your studio, just to give people an idea of what to expect when they book a bike fit with that fitter. And it's for me, it's the best standardized system that exists so far, because I think the main thing is there's lots of different bike fit companies out there. So for instance, like Retool, G-Biomized, BioRacer, Leomo, and I think like some of the companies, actually most of the companies I mentioned just there, they're very good at essentially being open to the fact that no one bike fit technology provides someone with all the answers, but can play an important role in giving some insight into particular issues and some objective feedback. But I think that some bike fit technology companies are maybe guilty of trying to suggest that their system is far superior to anything else that is available. And I think that the IBFI are really nice and I guess a really nice independent organisation that I've tried to get, I don't know, some level of unbiased recommendation of a good fitter in your area.
Yeah, that's good to know, because as I said, having spoken to you prior to this, it's very clear that there are so many different elements, so many different things to look at, so many different types of technology that really it comes down to experience and also the personal connection that you have with the bike fitter. I suppose that's probably one of the key things if people are going out there looking for local bike fitters. In terms of what warning signs would you suggest, or what things should people look out for fitters? Obviously, the personal connection is first and foremost. You mentioned bike fitters that suggest that they can get you into a perfect position in 2 hours. Is there anything else that people should be wary of when they're having those conversations with bike fitters, or any other tips in terms of how to engage with the bike fitter?
I think if you could, I think a lot of the time, if a bike fitter isn't really scared of divulging information to you, if it seems relevant on your question during an email conversation or a phone conversation, and as to and what they can do. I think what I'm getting at there is if you've got a problem that you really want solved, for instance, you're having problems with the saddle, or you're wanting to know if they can optimize your pedal stroke or your power output, you don't be afraid to ask them like how can you do that, or what have you got that can help me out? Because I think I certainly am not offended when people ask me quite specific questions about exactly what process we're going to go through. Not to necessarily give them information for free, but more just to kind of work out. It's quite an expensive service, so you want to make sure that the person you're paying that money to knows a little bit about what they're charging for.
What you're trying to solve.
Yeah, so I think don't be shy to just ask a few questions, I think, is the main thing. And if they don't seem willing to answer, I mean, I'm not talking about setting out a massive stall of like 100 questions and a perfect explanation to each one, but I think you could get a feel just by asking just a good number of questions and just explaining the problems you're having and seeing if they're willing to get on board with helping you or not. And I think another important one to just note is not every bike fitter knows everything, and if they seem to come across like they've done one weekend course somewhere one day, and they seem to be able to promise you the world, then I would be maybe skeptical.
Yeah. That's been super interesting. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and speak to us. Hopefully everyone can have a tweak on the turbo over the next couple of weeks. And in the meantime, we will do my video audit and then reconvene to do an episode on shoes and cleats and what brands offer what, and I think that will be a very useful conversation for people as well. And then off the back of that, maybe we could do a time trial specific one and get Alex on as well. He's an aerodynamic, he's an engineer by background, so it'd be good to get the two of you having a chat around the evolving trends within time trial positioning as well.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I'm perfectly up for that.
Brilliant. Well, thanks so much for taking the time. All the information that we've discussed today with regards to academic articles in terms of Dougie and Edinburgh Bike Fitting, the services that they do, that will all be in the show notes. Do get in touch with Dougie if you want to have a look at your bike position over the next couple of weeks, and we will be back very soon. Thank you very much for listening. Thanks for joining us, Dougie.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to the podcast, and more importantly, don't forget to download the Unfound app and join cyclists from around the world on the Hub. We'll see you on there.